Welcome to Starting Nowhere. I'm your host, Brandon. Make sure that you click like and subscribe and share this with any of your friends who you think would also like to see this episode. Today, my guest is Chaney Morrow. Chaney is an actor who has starred in films such as Haunt and the upcoming Wrong Turn reboot. We talk about how he got his start in acting, what his favorite films are, and who some of his favorite actors are. Please enjoy today's episode. Well, thank you very much for joining me today, Mr. Morrow. Why don't you go ahead and tell the people a little bit about yourself? Not your full IMDb page, just the highlights.
Name's Chaney Morrow. I'm an actor out of Dayton, Ohio. In the past couple years, have managed to achieve some decent, well, in my opinion anyway, there's some decent film work. I'm also a musician. Other than that, I'm not terribly interesting,
Well,
so
I don't think
basic dude.
anybody who knows you wouldn't agree with the not interesting part. Like, I haven't spoken to you, dude. We haven't spoken since high school. So, without aging both of us, I think that's almost 20 years ago. And I can tell you were interesting in high school, and just following your Facebook and following your career and things like that, you're still an interesting person. Whether or not that actually means anything in this day and age, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, thanks, man. Thank you. And likewise, bud. I've 20 years ago, I never would have thought, but like, man, this cat's gonna be a fighter, like in a ring and shit. I'm like, man, look at this cat, dude. He's all buffed up and kicking some ass. That's pretty awesome.
Well, thank you very much. I love how that's one of those stories when people say stuff like that. It's like, yeah, it's basically I thought you were a punk back in the day, and now I saw you like, oh crap, because I get that same thing. I get that same thing every once in a while if somebody's only seen me in long sleeves and they see me in short sleeves. They're like, holy shit, you got like tattoos. Like, I never thought you got a tattoo. Like, you think I'm a fucking nerd? It's like, what are you saying?
Look, yeah, what the hell's that supposed to mean?
Exactly, the backhanded compliment. I love it though, man. Speaking of backhanded compliments, how often do you get told you'll look Macaulay Culkin if he did more drugs?
I actually haven't heard that one in a couple years.
Oh, sweet. Bring it back an
But
oldie
yeah,
then.
no, I definitely heard something similar to that before.
Yeah, just
Uh,
busting your balls. You don't look anything like Macaulay Culkin, which is a good thing. But so let's talk about that, man. Let's talk about. So you and I know each other from high school. We went to an art school. You and I did some acting together here and there. Obviously, you were much more passionate about the craft than I was, which I think anybody who's done anything with me, they can say that because I'm not passionate about almost anything. Uh, so tell me, man, how was that like after you got out of high school? What did that look like for you? Just getting into the acting scene, like how was that process?
well, I went from Stivers to Sinclair, and I spent several years, way more. I spent way more years that you would expect to spend at a 2-year school.
Mm.
But I did a whole lot of theater work there, and I'd actually learned. I think it was the end of the first year there in the theater program that I was wrong about everything up to that point. So, because I always thought I had it figured out. But I realized that all through high school and stuff, it was as rewarding as it was. It was just attention grabbing, play. But just the craft, the art of it didn't hit me till probably about a year after college, and I continued to that till I'd pretty much exhausted what I could do at Sinclair, and I did some work at Wright State, though I was never officially enrolled there. I did some work for them, but I found myself at a kind of an impasse uh, right after then. Like, I'd still been doing music over the years, but even then, we were getting older, and some guys were getting married and having kids and stuff, and the rock star thing had, that dream had kind of that boat had kind of sailed, you know. So I found myself in a weird spot, but I managed to get a short film. It was called Good News for Modern Man, and it was being made by some Wright State graduates. And with that film there, I met some pretty awesome people and found that I had you know, just as much love for film acting as I did theater acting. And that project there led to an agency, and couple years of pounding out auditions and not getting anything, and getting this close to something awesome, like the callbacks, the final stage, just to, not get it. Years and years of that, brutal rejection. And, I was getting older and older, and it was starting to feel like, maybe I should rethink what I'm doing. Maybe I should just accept that, the business doesn't want me, or something. But I managed to land right there at the very end, man, right at the one of the darkest times. Got the news that I'd landed the film Haunt, and that led another thing and another, and it's been absolutely fantastic this whole time. But it wasn't without its share of setbacks and disappointments, rejections, and stuff like that. You got to have a really thick skin to go through all that and keep on moving. A lot of people do it and they're great, and some people it's just too much, and I understand that. I honestly do.
Yeah, man. I think you said something there in the beginning, and correct me if I made this up because I do that sometimes listening to people. But I think you talked about early on in the process how it was kind of ego driven and you were looking for the attention and everything like that. I say because of the process of going through those rejections and going through all the callbacks and getting close to your dreams and having it pulled from you, if you're not ego driven, I don't know what gets you through a lot of that. You know what I mean? You have to
Yeah.
believe you're worth it and to keep going back up to that grindstone and getting smacked in the face again because people don't understand and even in my limited experience with auditions, I can attest to it. You go out there and you lay yourself on the line, hoping that this is the project, to get you to the next thing. And then you get shot back down and you're like, all right, where do I go from here? The way it is for most people, it's a job interview, except your job requires you to interview once every couple of months, once, maybe multiple times in a week, whatever it's going to end up being. And people just don't understand the emotional toll that goes into that. They only see, I guess, the high side of that, the fame or whatever, and people getting
Yeah.
roses thrown at them on stage and everything.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I guess to elaborate on the ego driven aspect of like of high school theater, it was more like at that point the idea of like I'm gonna move to Hollywood and be an action star. That was still like something I think, maybe I thought that was still kind of possible, right? But about a year into doing real work and really focusing on it and realizing its importance, you realize that that's the biggest mistake you can make, walking into it. So I'm doing this because I want to be famous. Well, it's not going to happen like that. And I believe that those that go into it looking like that are basically set themselves up for failure, or they at least set themselves back a good amount of time, believing that that's got to be the furthest thing from your mind when trying to do the work. Whereas in high school, I just wanted the girls to look at me and shit like that. I thought it was easy. I didn't realize how interesting, how in depth it could be. And honestly, I think any actor that says any aspect of the job is like hard, you know, toughen up, man. There are much worse jobs. It's there's nothing hard about it. It's just it's to a guy that can paint really well. Painting a picture is not hard to him, but it means something to any artist. And I use the word artist very loosely, with actors. But
I
if you
think
if you go into it wanting fame, it's be prepared for a huge disappointment more often than not.
Well, first of all, I think going into anything hoping for fame or expecting it rather is probably going to let you down. I mean, I think we all want to be famous for. Well, I shouldn't say that. Some people are very introverted and don't want to be, even those that are. But yeah, I can see where anything that I've done, I'd love to be famous for it on some level. But at the same time, that's not the real work. Like you're talking about, the real work is actually being good enough at something that people want you to be famous, because that's how fame happens. You know what I mean? You people, with the exception of some small examples and everything like that, most people are famous because they're good at something. Period. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I think I would call acting definitely an art. Maybe again, I'm very biased because I started with it when I was young and then abandoned it like like I did everything else. But I think that the thing about acting is it's just like music, right? there's a big difference between the Beatles and maybe a one-hit wonder on the radio. That's the same thing with acting. You know what I mean? There's Josh Duhamel, who's the pretty boy actor and stuff like that. And there's Brad Pitt, who could have been a pretty boy, but decided to go another way with it. You know what I'm saying? So I
Mhm.
think it's unfair to say that actors aren't artists just because there's a lot of vapid actors. That's because the media, excuse me, not the media, but the populace wants that. The populace wants, 19,000 Fast and the Furiouses and only one, maybe Scorsese film every 5 years. You know what I'm saying? It's just the
Yeah.
levels to it. Which, by the way, that's where I thought you were going to go with acting. Like, as when we were in high school, man, I pegged you as the guy who was going to break through and like do that. And like for me, it was I saw you equally acting, but I also really thought you were going to get into filmmaking. Like you were going to be the kind of artist behind the camera, putting everything together, maybe still starring in it. I don't know, but like a young Scorsese or something like that, which again, still possible because he's old as shit.
Yeah, but shit, appreciate that, man. I appreciate that.
Yeah, man. I mean, it either says one of two things. Either I'm really, that's how highly I thought of you, or I'm just shit at picking out talent. I don't know which, but I'm hoping for the former, obviously.
Shit, yeah, me too. Me too.
Mhm. So tell me about Haunt Man. That one is, I think, one of your more widely released films that you've been involved with. Is that correct? Would you say that's true?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so tell me about that process, man. Tell me without giving away too much of the plot, because I think I saw somebody ruin it, part of the plot in one of the Facebook comments or something like that when you first got it, or maybe it had first been released or something like that. But tell people a little bit about that movie overall and your role in it.
It's about some college students on a Halloween party decide to visit a haunted house that they, had just kind of heard about. It's off the trails, kind of a spooky little place. And upon entry, they realize, maybe it's not fake, and they perhaps find themselves at the mercies of a few very specific, Halloween villains, if you will. Pretty pretty straight up, kind of a haunted house flick, but it was more than happy with the reception of it. Has been really pleasing. But if you like scary haunted house movies and stuff, I'd say this one's qualifies as a damn good one. I'm pretty proud to have been a part of that one.
So are you able to tell people who you are in it, or is that kind of the mystery of the movie?
No, I am the ghost, Mitch the ghost. You've got a couple of very specific bad guys, and we each have very specific duties in the film, and Mitch is he's a lot of fun. I think people that watch it, they more often than not seem to kind of dig the go. Well, they like all the bad guys. I love that the bad guys are so well liked in this flick. Um, but it's a good one, man. Not harp too heavy on a flick, but I'm a big horror fan myself. I grew up watching it, and to have my breakthrough, become a movie monster, uh, was a dream come true. The excitement, I was like, wow, wow, and I didn't really. I guess I didn't have much of frame of reference. I hadn't done anything on that scale before. But I think the consensus on the set was that we were doing something pretty special. Like it was better than your run of the mill uh, throwaway Amazon horror flick. Which, not saying anything bad about those, man. I watch most of them. I watch them all. Even the worst horror movie I ever saw, I still enjoyed. So maybe I'm not the guy to listen to about it, but
Well, that's that's the interesting thing, though, man. I find that some people like yourself who are deep into an art are either so deep into it that they hate everything, or that they have a more reverence for everything because they understand a lot more of the process and they can see the concept they were going for, and maybe they played with a technique that the more layperson doesn't notice or something like that. So I'm with you there when it comes to some of the recommendations. I made mistakes when I was younger because So again, to go back in the old days, I used to have the 8 DVDs at a time Netflix plan, you know, because I was watching that many movies and that many shows, and was when I was first joining the Air Force, I'd sit in my room and like pitch black and just watch movie after movie, and they'd get more and more conceptually just ridiculous, and that was more and more down the rabbit hole. And then I try to talk to people about films, and they're like, yeah, did you see whatever, you know, the AAA film that was out? And I'm like, oh, have you heard about this Hungarian vampire movie that I just saw? It's freaking awesome. Which later they made a terrible rendition in the US. What was
Let the
the
right one in.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah. The
See
Let Me
you.
In was the American version. Yeah,
Yeah,
it was a
yeah,
letdown.
yeah. But the original was incredible. I love that
Yes,
movie.
it was. It was.
Yeah, I mean the same. Oh, but the Cardinal Sin of Hollywood that I'll never forget, and I hate you a little bit just because you're associated with it loosely.
Mhm.
Not this movie, but the industry that
Yeah,
they did an American version of Old Boy. Look, God,
yeah.
Old Boy is one of my top 5 movies. I love Chan Wook Pak's Revenge trilogy and all that type of stuff, but Old Boy especially. And then they did a American rendition where they gave away one of the huge plot twists in the credits of the movie. So that means that they made up some BS way to twist it back in. I'm like, I'm not watching it. I'm out. I'm out on it immediately.
Mhm.
So, but anyways,
Yeah.
but you know, so I'm with you on that when it comes to recommending horror movies and stuff like that. But I assume if you're involved in it and it's got the kind of cult following that it seems to be kind of cultivating and everything like that, that it's actually a really good flick and everything. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go watch it here shortly. In the next couple of days, because I've been meaning to forever. I bought Juna. You remember Juna Walrab, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. She has a film that came out on Amazon. I bought it like the first day it went for sale. Still haven't watched it. I just wanted to support. You know what I mean? So I try to do stuff like that too. But I want to go back and watch her film and then watch your film as well.
What's the name of her flick, man? I'd love to watch it.
You know what? I will have to get back to you on that. I'll message you on Facebook after this, but I forget what it's called. But I bought it on Amazon, so
Okay.
it's in my
Yeah, yeah.
cart or
Well, hell,
whatever, so I can
I
go get
guess
it.
I suppose I could look it up myself also. Cool, cool.
Yeah,
No, man,
yeah.
I didn't know that. That's great news.
Yeah, I think she I'm pretty sure she like wrote and directed it. So I think she was like again behind the camera on that one and everything. But long story short, man, I'm very excited for the success you had in that film and just seeing it in general. But it was really cool for me to see you start going on that kind of circuit because, as I said, horror movies are one of those genres that may not have initial success with like sales or views and stuff like that, or whatever, but they just have that slow burn. They build up over time and then they become like fan favorites and they start getting those subreddit cult followings and everything like that. And so now they really grow into something. And that's what I love about horror as a genre, because it's one of the few genres that really do that. The other genres, if you're not a big box office or you're not like kind of or you do something like what's Jordan Peele's first movie, Get Out, where you're
Yeah.
made for 5 million and you make like 300 or whatever. You know, those are the only things people really know about. But with horror, like I said, something came out in 1985 and people just keep talking about it.
Yeah.
So
It's the
sorry,
most
go ahead.
wonderful fan base, man. The horror genre,
Mm-hmm.
most loyal, wonderful, wonderful people, man. The horror mutants is hell. I'm one of them. It's awesome to be on the other side of it now.
Mm-hmm.
The fans are just they're just great, and when they love it, man, they love it forever.
And not only that, I think that the horror fans are some of the most informed fans. Like they really understand the genre a lot of times. And so if you make a subtle reference to maybe like another killer or another movie or something like that, a lot of times they pick up on that. And that becomes part of the whole fun as well. Is there's a lot of fan service in that genre, which is, again, just makes everybody feel like they're part of it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
So how much fun is it to play the bad guy? Because I know you've acted, you've been the good guy, you've been, the friend of the good guy, you've been in like all these different roles and everything. So how fun is it to actually be the good guy? Because again, in my very limited experience, roles where you really get to go for something like that and go to somewhere just ridiculous in a lot of ways is the most fun.
Uh, it's great, man. To play the bad guy is incredible because you can. Well, I mean, there are no rules. Uh, there are no rules when you're the bad guy. I mean, obviously there are lines you can't cross or whatever, but as long as you really believe whatever terrible thing you're doing is the right thing to do, it's actually a lot of fun because it's fantasy and this shit ain't real and it's fun to pretend for a little while. And Hunt was a lot of fun. I mean, I spent most of the time behind the mask, but um, a lot of good chemistry develops with the cast, even with me under the mask. I thought, and it's, the same reason that I said I grew up loving horror, and Freddy Krueger was like my hero. So all I could hope to do was provide what he instilled on me, which is, personality is everything in a bad guy. Yes, just because they're bad don't mean that you can't like them. You don't have to hate the bad guy. Not every time,
Yeah, the
So
love-hate
it's
relationship.
yes. Like, you hate that you love him so much. You hate him, but you want another movie. You're like, oh, okay, bring him back to life. Let's do it again.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
know, yeah, just make some shit up. Bring him back to life. It'll be fine.
So let me nerd
So
out for
so
a
it's
second.
awesome just to play that aspect of it, like the movie monster. So I ate that up, man. I had an absolute blast with it.
Dude, that's awesome. And I think some of the best work comes from when you're actually enjoying it as well. Obviously, you hear some of the horror stories about different actors on different sets and they hated it and they still were able to get good work out of it. But I do think that when there's joy in the work, that's where it really shines through as well. And I
Yeah.
love watching performances like that. So,
It always makes me feel good to know that, like, what I'm watching, or know that the people that made the movie, had a really good time doing it.
mm-hmm.
Because I think that you can always tell if the vibe was good, because it translates
Yeah,
in the film. Sometimes if people just can't get along, the movie feels that way.
yeah.
Like, oh, okay, this feels like this. Some pieces didn't come together here. So and so was difficult, or you end up with Batman Forever.
I love watching. Again, this genre is pretty cliche, if you will, in a lot of ways. But I love watching rom coms where you can tell that they didn't like each other. That is my
Oh yeah.
favorite because they still have to write that ending where they get together, but you're like, oh, they hate each other. I love it.
hmm
It's so
This
much
movie,
fun.
like, the selling point of a romantic comedy is chemistry between your two leads, and they
Yeah.
just can't stand each other.
Oh, it's
Like,
great.
oh man, this is going to be a train wreck.
I love it. But throwing back to something you said a second ago, because I grew up also a big fan of Freddy Krueger. Robert Englund, the actor who played him. I love when he shows up and stuff, not in makeup, because you can tell there's so few people who recognize him. But I'm like, every time, I'm like, immediately, I'm like, oh, that's Robert Englund. That's awesome. But did you see the movie, The Rise of Leslie Vernon, Behind the Mask?
Oh yeah. Behind the Mask.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm set to do a convention next September with the guy that plays Leslie Vernon, Nathan Basil.
Oh my God, dude, that movie again. We're going back to the concepts of the movie. They
Mhm.
did a great job in the film and the production and everything like that. But just the concept of it alone was amazing to me. And then when you go and you watch the film and they break it down that way, and it gets to I think the third act or whatever, and it flips from like documentary style to like, dude, beautiful. I freaking love that movie. It's
Yeah,
incredible.
yeah, yeah. I did. I enjoyed that one too. It's super, like, really, like, meta, like, kind
Hmm.
of, for a little heavily meta for my taste ordinarily. But the Scott Wilson, the old serial killer,
Hmm.
the old guy, when they, like, go see him and are drinking beers together and
Yeah. Oh
stuff, and
yeah.
like that right there just fascinated me. I'm like, God damn, like, this is gnarly. Like, and I'd also heard some rumor that he was actually supposed to be the character from the original Black Christmas,
Oh yeah.
the
Yeah. Great movie
Billy,
too.
or like he was
Yeah.
Billy all grown up. I'm like, oh man. Like, that's, yeah, no, I enjoyed it, and I thought Nathan Basil was fantastic.
Oh, he was great.
Yeah, he really stole the show, man. He did a hell of a job.
Well, I think one of the favorite things from that he did in that performance is he, again, for the majority of the time when he's playing that character, even though he's a murderer, he's very lighthearted, he's very playful and stuff like that. But then there's a couple of times when you see that that's a veneer, and then, like, he shines through a little bit with his psychopathic rage or whatever, and you're like, oh, and like just playing those juxtapositions of emotions are beautiful, man. Like I said, I really really enjoy that movie. And again,
Yeah,
it's a movie most people haven't heard of, but I love that film, and I try to
yeah, and
introduce it
I
to
think I
people.
think real genre fans
Yeah,
definitely know that one, man. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. And it's but those are
I
one of
mean,
those
hell,
movies
at one point he like he's like, before the slaughter set to begin, he's like crying tears of joy
yeah.
about how happy he is. I'm like, this is wild. He's like, I'm so happy.
Dude, it's incredible. Like I said, from start to
Yeah, that was
finish, the
good
way they did
stuff,
it was
man.
great. So,
Yeah, totally.
oh man. So tell me about that. What some of the movies that you've watched because again, back in high school and stuff like that, I kind of remember, and I'm probably wrong because again, I shouldn't be playing back my memory from that long ago, but I kind of remember you being more into, like I said, the Scorsese flicks and those kind of like, I don't want to say broody, but like a lot of the like more thoughtful pieces that kind of were slower in pace and everything like that. Is that still your taste these days, or you kind of expanded out from
Yeah,
that?
well, I mean, I'm not, I like it all, just give me as long as the story's good, and some stories are better than others, or some are told better than others. I mean, I definitely do love a slow burn in a film. Like, I'd say if I was asked now what my favorite film was right now, and so, sometimes that changes every couple months. Depends on if, I'll watch a bunch of Scorsese movies next month. It'll go back to, Goodfellas, or the month after that, it might go back to, you know, in Forrest Gump or something. But if I was asked now, I would say No Country for Old Men. And you know how kind of dark, brooding, and I won't say it's not dark in, like, color, but how dark in tone it is, and how dry it kind of is. Like, there's no slow motion. It's full of intense violence, but the violence happens so fast, it's almost realistic, so visceral. And the Coen brothers are, incredible. But if I was asked today what my favorite movie is, I would say No Country for Old Men. So I would say yes. I still probably steer more towards films of that nature. Uh, but I'll still, I'll watch a horror flick or an old comedy, just as soon as I'd watch No Country for Old Men.
Oh,
And I say old comedy because I don't think there's a whole lot of good new stuff out. I don't think there has been for years.
and that's fair. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I do think that some of the genres, good work in a lot of these genres seems to be cyclical. You know what I mean? It's like a bunch of them come back to back to back, and then you get nothing for a few years and everything. But I will say my favorite movie is one I actually saw in high school, and still to this day I can quote 90% of it. But it's Snatch. I used to be a
Yep.
huge Guy Ritchie fan, but he is not consistent. so
Yeah. Yeah.
he
Yeah.
slips a lot.
I know exactly. I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, to start so strong, like Lock, Stock, Two Smoking Barrels was
mhm.
this huge underground success. He got snatched from that. Snatch was just a karate kick to the face, like,
Yeah.
so awesome. I mean, it was one of a kind, best movie of the year it came out.
Hmm.
Uh,
But I just
and
love
then, yeah, it's
ensemble
hard to
cast.
follow up, man. It's hard to make like a perfect album and follow up. How do you follow up a perfect album? It's tricky.
Oh, exactly. But I just love ensemble casts like that too, and that's what Guy Ritchie seems to be really good at is getting a large number of actors into his films that all are important to the piece. That none of them really
Yes.
are sidekicks or background characters, depending on the way you view the movie overall. And Snatch is a perfect example of that. Every character in that film is important to the overall story. They all contribute like almost equally. It's
I got a question for you. Who
go
is your
for it.
personal favorite? Okay, two questions. A
Yeah.
question in two parts. Who was your favorite character in Snatch?
Oh man, that is a good one. The first time I watched it, I remember it being Lenny James's character, which his name is escaping me right now. I don't
It's
know why.
not Solomon.
No, because he's called. No, it is Saul.
No, it's
He is Saul.
Saul.
He is Saul.
Solomon.
Because the
Yeah,
other
he's
guy says it
Solomon.
to him all the time. Yeah.
Yeah.
But going back, man, Jesus, that is super tough. Uh, I'd probably have to go just on. Man, damn it, I can't get pinned down on that right now. I think going with my gut, we'll say Bullet Tooth Tony probably. But
Yeah.
I don't like any answer, but that's the answer I'm going to go with right now because I kind of want to say Tyrone because Tyrone's parts, everything Tyrone says in that movie is freaking hilarious and just
Oh yeah, yeah,
ridiculous.
everything. Well, everything, man. The movie's filled with so many great one-liners and, like,
Hmm.
laugh out loud dialogue, like the back and forths between people,
Yeah.
the sarcasm. It's fucking stellar. Like, it's hysterically funny and superbly acted. Like, hell, even Tyrone, I had read, was just worked security on the set, but Guy Ritchie was taken by him somehow and said, will you play my getaway driver? And that was kind of the joke because he was so big, such a big dude. But turns out he could act too.
Freak.
Like, yeah, bet. So who was your favorite performance?
Favorite performance? Oh man, dude, that again, a very good one. The cheap answer is not the right answer, but the Brad Pitt, but that's cheap. I don't like it. I'd probably go with Dennis Farina, actually.
Yeah.
The bullet dodger, Boris.
Okay. Yeah. Farina's great. Cousin Abby, he's great.
Yeah.
I always go back and forth, but I think my favorite character is probably Turkish or Tommy because they're like the only innocent kind of dudes in the whole thing.
Yeah.
They just kind of get roped up into some nonsense, and they handle it pretty good. Uh, Favorite performance is, yeah, probably Farina or Bricktop.
Yeah.
Alan Ford, because everything he says is hysterically funny. Hell, I use one of his lines sometimes at work, or well, I used to anyway.
I say before the Germans all the time. Like I'm constantly saying the Germans, and
Before
nobody knows what I'm
the
talking about. So it makes me mad.
before the Germans get here.
Dude, it's amazing. Again, it's absolutely an incredible film, and I feel like, and again, maybe this is just me looking too far into things, but another guy I like a lot, and he has a lot of box office success now, but Christopher Nolan. But Memento is just, again, the first time you see it, it's just mind bending because of everything. But then you go back and you watch Following when you see him playing with those concepts, and you see him going into it and all that type of stuff. I love it. But Guy Ritchie and Christopher Nolan, the thing that I think helps their films is they're both involved in the screenwriting of it as well, like heavily. They get to the point where they get a screenwriting credit for it, which I feel like does help when the director has the same vision as the dialogue. Quentin Tarantino also does that, but again, I do feel like Quentin Tarantino is a bit inconsistent. He's got some of my favorite films, and then he's got some of the films that I hate. And I'm going to go out here. I'm super counterculture on this one. I hate Reservoir Dogs. That movie just bores the bejesus out of me.
Yeah.
I can't get again. But the worst offense that Quentin Tarantino has ever done was Death Proof. It was like watching him masturbate on screen because he believes he's so good at dialogue, and he is. To his credit, he really is good at it. But it was just so dumb. For 40 minutes, you build these characters, and then you murder them and move on to new ones. And I was like, great. So I just watched this for nothing. You could start the movie in like the second to third act and get the same ending basically from it. But anyways, I digress. I just had to get on the soapbox for a second there. But what's the other guy's name that did the other?
Rodriguez?
Yes, thank you. Is it Richard or Robert? I never know which
Robert.
what. Thank you.
Robert.
I always do that. I always want to say Richard Rodriguez, but he's incredible too. And I think there's a lot of people who I talk to still to this day. I'm like, yeah, Dust Till Dawn, that's a Rodriguez film. It's like, no, that's Tarantino. I'm like, no, it's not Tarantino at all.
He wrote it, but it's Robert Rodriguez's directing all the way.
Yeah.
Hell, the whole liquor store bit at the beginning, that was like the perfect example of those two working together, because it had Tarantino vibes all over it, and it had Rodriguez vibes all over it. Like, I love those two. I love those two when they work together. Because they're like, best buddies, and they have fun. I'm like, oh man, your day at the office is like, my Saturday night. I get to watch it.
Exactly.
Shit, that's so awesome.
So who is that person that you would love to work with now? It doesn't have to necessarily be your favorite actor or anything like that. But who is the person you just think you would enjoy being on screen with, and they'd bring out the best in you?
That's a good question, man. There's so many actors that I love and just like respect. Haven't met, most of them or anything, but if there's one guy in particular, I've been compared to him. Somebody say I look like him or something. It's probably my favorite compliment because I love him so much. And if he ever heard this, he'd think I was a total weirdo. But I would love to work with Sam Rockwell. I think.
Oh my God, yeah.
I think me and him could. I think think we'd work well together. But what the hell do I know?
He's another example of the charisma that he can make a regular somewhat film or the concept of a film really come alive. There was a film he was in with Anna Kendrick and RZA. I think it's called Mr. Happy or something like that. Where again, stupid premise, but because Sam Rockwell's awesome, Anna Kendrick's awesome, and RZA is awesome, it makes it work. But he's a hitman who falls in love with a girl and he doesn't lie. So he tells her he's a hitman on their first date and everything like that. And it's just this stupid movie, but I love it because again, I like Sam Rockwell and his energy so much. So I could see that. Yeah. I could see that, man.
Yeah.
You could be a stunt double.
He's anything. Shit, I'll be a stand-in, man. I'll bring him coffee.
But do you think again, this is the one thing that I always think about when it comes to famous people, particularly actors. Do you think that he is somebody who meeting would ruin the experience of your fandom?
No. I don't. One thing I've been trying to learn since I broke into the film business is how to keep the art separate from the person.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say I met someone I kind of looked up to or idolized, and they were a real prick or something.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't not like their stuff because of it. I'd just be like, oh, it's it's the performance that I loved initially. No one ever said he was a nice dude. So I try to keep those two separate, or I'm learning to get better at it. So and I've only heard good things about Sam Rockwell. So
no, absolutely. And I want to be clear. I'm not insinuating that Sam Rockwell is one of those people.
Yeah.
I just find it interesting to think about that because I am also trying to work on that, but I also have a bit of I won't say an attitude problem, but if I don't like you, I don't fucking like you. And that's basically what it is, right? So if I was to get some walk-on extra background part or whatever, and then like the dude that was there and he's a douche, and I'm like, dude, you're an actor, but I'll beat the shit out of you. So what are you talking about? You know what I mean? So like, and so it would be hard for me to go back and then watch him in like a film that I'm enjoying because this dude's a prick. For hearing some stories of that, like Community is one of my, I'm a cult follower of Community. I love that show and everything. And Chevy Chase was a complete dick on the set. And now you look at National Lampoons, you look at all these things, you're like, oh man, has he always been like that? Or was it just this one project?
There's a long list of things you could read about Chevy going all the way back to the 70s, man.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was a big Community fan also, and I read an awful lot of stuff, and frankly, I'm amazed he got to do as many seasons as he did,
mm-hmm.
because the erratic, wild behavior, the comments, the shit that he was quoted having said, he got away with an awful lot. I mean, he asked me to give him a whole lot of leeway.
Yeah.
As far as what I read, so.
And I'll say this on that particular project. I think one of the reasons he lasts as long as he did is because Dan Harmon's also a psychopath. Now, again, I love Dan Harmon's work, but I know Dan Harmon for a fact. I don't want to meet Dan Harmon because it ruins a lot of the things for it. But I know that he's not the type of person I would like, I think, in a one-on-one situation. But he's, again, a genius when it comes to what he does and how he gets those performances out of people. So I think that's why, because if your showrunner is that level of disruptive, then one of your actor being that way is kind of just that battle. And he would do things to kind of poke at Chevy as well. So I'm like, what are you doing, man?
Oh yeah, that's like poking a bear, man. Like
mm-hmm.
a really, really pissed off, ornery bear.
Yeah. But those are the type of things that I like, man. So when it comes to any movie show, I've learned that about myself, and I don't know why it is this way. Maybe it's because I am a loner still in my heart, but I love ensemble casts. I love when you have those big things like Community. You're talking about most of Guy Ritchie's films. I feel like there are a lot of those are ensembles as well. But then you got the singular performances. I think the most mainstream version of this, of course, is Heath Ledger in Dark Knight Rises, where he just comes in and knocks it out of the park. But then you would just have all these other films when you go and you watch them. There's just one actor who just pulls through, and you're like, oh man, the rest of this film is just it's okay, it's whatever. But then you see this one actor who just pulls it through. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, absolutely, man. Them are the scene stealers. That's what everybody wants, and that's what every actor strives to do, is to be the guitar solo of a film, or at least let people know you were there. You have to,
Absolutely.
try to leave an impression, because every job leads to another, man, as long as you do a good one.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the interesting things you're talking about there is that with acting, it's not just what you do on the camera, but on the set that gets around. Because, like you said, it's a relatively small world and people talk. So, as you
Oh
said,
yeah.
you made a comment earlier where if somebody's difficult to work with, then that if they're on the line of whether or not they want to put them in that role and they hear they're difficult, then maybe they lean, let's go with this other guy. Let's give this other guy a chance, stuff like that. So it's just a
Yeah.
crazy world where you're constantly being judged on what you put on camera and you're constantly being judged for what you bring to the overall chemistry behind the scenes. So you can't
Yeah.
really piss too many people off but then once you get big, people do it all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. I I suppose,
So how big are you going to be before you start doing that? Just, some
Oh
guy
man, let me
walks
tell you,
through the background of a set and you just start cussing him out for 20 minutes and it becomes an internet
uh,
meme.
somebody drops their lights in my face and I
Yeah,
go full bail on them.
I love it.
No, no, never, man. I'm s- I've been in dating my whole life, so you spend enough time struggling and working hard. I don't think any real man ever forgets where they came from. You know, you're at the
Well,
bottom long enough. If you could ever reach the top, you don't forget you was at the bottom and how quickly you could be there again.
yeah. Well, and dude, I'll say this: that is one of the things that makes you somebody who's worth looking up to when it comes to those type of things, because you do feel that way, and I never imagined that you wouldn't. But not everybody is that way. So a lot of people, once they do get that level of success or any level of success really, they start forgetting immediately where they came from, and they start acting different towards the people, and they start treating people as lower class and all this other type of stuff. So that's why well, that's not the only reason. I just want to say I know famous people, but that's one of the reasons I think that I want someone like yourself to become that level of famous, because you'll wear it in the right way. You'll do it the right way and you'll spread that love to other people. And again, like you said, you give a shit about the actual craft of what you're doing instead of just the fame and the women and everything.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah. Thank you, man. I appreciate that. Thank you.
no, absolutely. So what's on the horizon, man? How is this COVID situation thrown off some of maybe your momentum you had going and everything right before this stuff popped off? How has it changed your process right now?
Well, I did it. It hiccuped last year a little bit, but there were two projects last year. They were both just postponed for a while, but managed to get those two done. And there are it's a project coming up in January. I can't speak too much about it just yet, in the chance that this gets heard and I get blamed for letting something out. But there's one on January, and those there should be three films out this next year, though. Wrong Turn will be released. The comedy Movers Ultimate will be released, and the horror film I got done filming probably 2 months ago. That'll be out also next year. So it should, if anything, at least we got some. We got those three films to look forward to.
Dude, that's awesome. And just so you know, right now, this is supposed to go up about mid-January. So hopefully, whatever the news you can't talk about now will be up there, and I can add a little tagline in there, like on the side. And it's like, this is what he was talking about. You know what I mean? Give it a
Yeah,
little
yeah, yeah.
promo.
It should be. Yeah, it should be. If that's what it comes out, then yeah, it should be done with by then. I should be in the clear.
Awesome, man. Dude, that's dope though. The Wrong Turn obviously is another one of those franchises that had kind of stood up to the test of time in the horror genre. So I'm happy to see you attach to projects like that as well, man. I'm interested to see you in comedy. You know what I mean? That's again, you were a funny motherfucker back in high school. So I don't think most people would know that about you. So I'd love to see you play to that, and maybe that's really where people will start. You'll break through, and more will come from that. Because I can see you doing just bouncing between horror and comedy, the two like opposite ends of that spectrum.
It'll be it'll be interesting.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see. It'll be interesting though. I had a lot of fun the time that I was there doing it. So
If I'm just saying, if you start getting really famous, you need an entourage, man. I'm down to be Turtle. I'll be turned off one day.
Gotcha, gotcha.
I, oh man. So all right. So who is? Let me ask a two-parter for you because you asked me a two-parter earlier. I want to ask you a two-parter.
Right.
Who is your favorite actor, and who do you believe is the most skilled? Because they're not always the same person, and I think sometimes we pin ourselves
I
down
know
to
what
try
you
to
mean.
answer that way.
I think probably the most skilled would be Daniel Day-Lewis, probably the most skilled. Um, but my personal favorite, well, my personal favorite died years ago, but there's someone else. There's so many to pick from, but okay. My personal favorite, and it's close. Day-Lewis may be the most technically gifted, but my personal favorite at this point would be Denzel Washington. And he's damn great also. They're just two different types of actors.
Mm-hmm.
And Denzel just the coolest man on the planet. It's hard not to love everything he does, you know.
Absolutely. Absolutely, man. I think that Denzel Washington is one of those great, from a mainstream perspective, underrated actors. I think he, again, not to make this topic get too heavy in that direction or anything like that, but obviously race plays a factor in some of the roles he got when he was younger and everything like that. But also, just more importantly, how big his films became because of like I went back and recently I've been watching it a lot this year, but Malcolm X and his performance in Malcolm X just freaking incredible. And
Oh yeah.
I shouldn't say hate. I always do that. I use too strong words. I am not a big fan of Spike Lee, but and even in that film, I think somebody else could have maybe gotten different things out of Denzel and everything, but just his performance in that. I hate that he won an Oscar for Training Day because as far as Denzel film goes, it's a great movie. Love the movie. But as far as performances go for Denzel, you're like, that's like middle of the road at best. It's not exceptional. You know what I mean? He's just playing
He
a
was
bad guy. He
just
had
I
fun
mean
with
he
it.
was, he was like a powerhouse, but yeah, it wasn't exactly difficult for him to do because I
Yeah.
mean he was just cool as ice the entire time. So
Yeah.
I'm like, the dude can look cool reading a book.
Yeah, I think the most difficult thing on that set was him growing that stupid ass goatee. But you know what I mean? Like, because it was like super squared off, and it just I don't know. Anyways, again, I digress into the small details that don't matter to most people. But I think it's an interesting. Who was the guy that you said passed away that you would have put on there?
Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Okay, fair. Yeah, man. That was another one. But he again, guys like Philip Seymour Hoffman, are really when you think of true starving artist type people, no pun intended, that he was one of those people because he really, really was into the craft in that way that it
Oh yeah.
read through on the screen whenever he was on there and stuff. So I'm with you on that one for sure.
If he was alive, I would have said he was the most technically gifted.
Really, over Day
Yeah,
Lewis.
he would have been. Yes. Well, the yeah, and that's just my personal opinion.
Yeah.
You know.
Anybody who gets mad at people for these type of picks are either just super fanboying or they're ridiculous. Probably
Yeah.
both, but
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, hell, it's not even really a contest. It's just my preference, and I love them both. I mean, it's you
Yeah,
know.
exactly. Because you talk about that, like Daniel Day Lewis being the most technically gifted, sure. But then there's somebody who's like, oh, The Rock's my favorite actor. I'm like, all right, well, cool. He makes you happy. I don't have
Yeah.
any problem with that. I think it's a stretch, but sure, whatever you enjoy is really, at the end of the day, this is art, but it's also entertainment. And you have to balance that line, and everybody's line is different. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. And some people don't take film as seriously, but they like movies, and they say the Rock is their or Dwayne Johnson's their favorite actor. I'm like, oh, okay. I got no problem with Dwayne Johnson. I'd never hold any will towards people's likes or dislikes as far as acting. What I do hate is when somebody like vehemently hates an actor and they won't give me a reason why. You know,
I've
I'll be
got
like, oh, so this person's good. They're like, oh, I hate him. They say, I'm like, why? And they won't tell me. I'm like, you're just being an asshole.
yeah. I've only got one actor that I vehemently hate, and that's how I know I'm starting to get old because I have a person on Saturday Night Live that I hate, and I always remembered older people saying that. But Kyle Mooney, I can't stand that guy. Every scene he's in, but the thing is, I think that he knows that because he's a writer as well, and so he only plays roles that you hate in SNL. He never is not like something that you kind of despise. I'm like, all right, man. So you recognize who you are. So
Yeah, no, I'm not familiar.
you're lucky. You're very lucky. I'm that guy now, man. I'm watching every episode of SNL. I'm analyzing the skits and like doing all that stuff. And like, it's bad. It's not a good place to be. So, who is somebody you think is super underrated as far as like when it comes to acting? They don't get their props. Maybe in a mainstream way. Maybe even in conversations like this, people just don't bring up their names, but they are super talented, or even just super enjoyable. Really.
um, there are a lot of underrated character actors out there, uh, but it's say one guy that's comes to mind as being super underrated, or I worry that not enough people know who he is William Fichtner.
Mm. You're hitting the nail on the head because I don't know who that is.
You'd know him if you saw his face. You ever seen that Nick Cage movie Drive Angry?
No, I have not.
It's a lot of fun. How about The Perfect Storm? I remember we had to watch that like over and over
Oh,
again in high school.
yeah, I definitely watched it, but man, that's forever ago. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I'm gonna do my homework after this, though, for sure, and I will
Yeah,
find out.
you'll know him when you see him.
Yeah.
But he's awesome. He was in Heat also, if you ever saw Heat.
I still to this day have not seen Heat, man. That is
Oh man, that's a good
it's
one. Now that's an ensemble cast for your ass right there, boy. That's a good one.
well, Heat is like commonly makes the list for top movies of all time for a lot of people and stuff like that, and it's still just
Yeah.
one I haven't seen it, and there's no reason at this point that I haven't, other than I haven't.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's I strongly recommend that.
Yeah, I definitely need to see that.
But yeah, I'd say William Fichtner's damn underrated. Another guy that I always thought was underrated. I still don't think we see him enough is Harold Perrineau. He was Mercutio in DiCaprio's Romeo and Juliet.
You're going way too far back with the references. Again, I've
You ever
seen
see that
that.
show Oz?
No.
The Edge.
No, but this is why I love talking to people like you, because you have those people. Now I'm going to go look up and follow them like a rabbit
Yeah,
hole for
you'd
the
know
next
him if you
3
saw him,
months.
but he's always been excellent, and he's always in supporting roles. And had a bit on Sons of Anarchy for a little while, and he's great every time. He always puts in good work, and then it stands out because I've been watching him for like 20 years now.
Mm.
At least since that Romeo and Juliet flick.
Yeah, dude, I still remember the Romeo and Juliet flick when it came out, and just again, a concept of a film better than the actual the how they actually
The
put it together.
execution.
Yeah, thank you. Yes,
Mhm.
the concept, love, execution, a little bit of desire, but again, if you can get me enough into the concept of a film like that did, then I can still enjoy it. It's still enjoyable for that, because
Yeah, I
again,
like
right
it.
when it came out, we were still doing all the Shakespeare shit.
Yep.
Midsummer's Night Dream and all that stuff.
Yep. You were Peter Quince.
And you were
I was
Puck, right?
Nick Bottom the Weaver. Yeah.
Or you were Bottom? Who was
Yeah,
Puck?
Nick Bottom, not the Bottom.
No.
Sorry.
That's golden. That's
Just
good.
good, just good. Yeah, Nick Bottom the Weaver, and you were Peter Quince. Remember, we putting on a play.
But who was Puck though?
I don't remember who the hell played Puck.
Because I always thought it was you. I guess I just assumed that you had the starring role, or well, I guess
I think
Puck.
maybe it was Dorothy.
I don't know, man.
Dorothy or Stephen Bowler, but no, I think he did 12th Night. Fuck, I don't remember.
Me either,
But no, I
man.
remember I was Peter Quince because I was really excited that Kevin Kline. I was Nick Bottom because I was excited Kevin Kline played him in the movie. So I was like, oh, bet. Cool.
Dude, that's awesome.
But hell, at that point, I didn't understand Shakespeare at all, man, until I got to college. And now, I love the shit now, but at the time, it was just so damn difficult to do.
I want to time travel to meet Shakespeare just to see if he was a hack. You know what I mean? Like he was just making shit up, and we gave it all the gravitas after the fact and everything like that.
It's our fault.
Yeah. He's basically National Lampoon from back then or whatever.
He's like Freddy Krueger of Shakespeare. We gave you your power. We did this.
I freaking love it, man.
Turns
That would be
out
awesome.
Marlowe really actually wrote everything.
Oh man. So go into some of the more classic actors really quick, just because I'd be interested. Do you think that Brando was as talented as people said he was? And that's not a trick question. I'm honestly interested because
Yes. I think in the sense that he was like kind of the first to usher in this super artsy way in the mainstream. Like some say that when Cary Grant saw young Marlon Brando start acting, that's when he retired because he said, "This ain't my world anymore." Uh, Brando was original. He brought the idea of method act. He brought all that stuff into the light. That's how Meisner, Stanislavski, all that awesome stuff. He kind of introduced it, and everybody, and he was. I mean, you got to admit, there's some stuff he did that's like lightning in a bottle.
Yeah.
It's insane. Even when you read about how difficult he was
Yeah.
doing it, you look at him in Apocalypse Now, and you're like, my God. Like, and none of that was scripted. Like, he was just kind of doing his own. Like, my goodness, man. It's now he's the definition of gravity. That's what Brando was, the definition of it. That movie with the Freshman with Matthew Broderick, he was fantastic in that. Like, so I do believe he was as gifted as everyone says he was. Now we talk about him, the person. All I know is what I've read. And a lot of mixed reviews.
But I think Brando, and so let me start with, I agree. Apocalypse Now, just, again, the movie overall to me was okay, but Brando, that's the performance again. You're pulling it out of that. Brando, freaking world bending in that. But for somebody like Brando, those stories add to the legend. You know what I mean? That rock star type nonsense. Writing different people into the script because they were part of his entourage, and he just wanted them around set, and like all the nonsense that he got into. But you're like, that just adds to all of it. You're like, he's worth that difficulty. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But nuts, absolutely nuts. But somebody, I want to get your take on this because this person reminds me somewhat of Robin Williams, not necessarily in level of talent, but in the way that they can do comedy as well as more serious acting, and I think they're really talented at it. I don't think you're going to see this coming, first of all. Let me start there. But I have a huge affinity for Robin Williams. The first time I saw When Dreams May Come, like, that was when it locked in for me because I was still really young when that happened. But somebody who I hope really gets a lot more serious work and gets a lot more leading work and stuff like that too is Melissa McCarthy. I think she's insanely talented, and I just feel like that a lot of people don't really pay that much attention because she's most famous for like Bridesmaids and just over the top gross out humor and that type of stuff, but she's incredibly talented when it comes to acting.
I agree, man. The film Saint Vincent, she was fantastic in that, and no one cared. No one paid attention to that film, and I thought she was incredible and heartbreaking.
Dude. And those are the type of things that I love, man. I truly love when you have those type of roles for somebody you didn't see it coming from. Like I just said, Robin Williams was the first instance of that for me, but just anybody who you go into, because again, being a Batman snob somewhat when I was younger, you hear Heath Ledger's going to play the Joker. You're like, this is bullshit. He can't hold Jack Nicholson's socks, whatever else and stuff. And then you go see it and you're like, Jesus Christ. I'm like, all right, he went way different than Nicholson did, but he did his thing. That was amazing. And just all the different people you have play through. Even Vince Vaughn's had a couple of the roles. I forget the name of that movie where he was like the creepy stepdad or something like that. And
Domestic Disturbance.
Yes, yeah. Because again, Vaughn, that's completely off character for him. You're like, holy shit, this is actually mildly terrifying because seeing you, then you're like, oh yeah, Vince Vaughn's also a giant human being. Like all of this is terrifying.
Yeah.
But now he's in some film where he's a serial killer who switches bodies with a 13-year-old girl. So it goes all the different ways.
I'm looking forward to seeing that, actually.
Well, it's one of those concepts that's so ludicrous, and it's been done, the body switching thing, of course, but now you've got Vince Vaughn acting out a 13-year-old. They're like, all right, morbid curiosity and just sheer immature enjoying it. I'm going to enjoy that film. I know that I will.
Oh, yeah, man. I'm looking forward to it.
But again, I think that's the beautiful thing about acting in general, especially, like I said, for somebody like yourself who can appreciate what some people may call more sophomoric, because sometimes you can get, and I did, I'm accusing myself, I'm not accusing you, where I got so far into what I thought was real acting and what was real movies and things like that, that I was looking down on things that I knew I enjoyed, that I was talking shit to myself essentially for enjoying like just stupid movies. Again, I keep going back to this, which makes me sound super outdated, but National Lampoon type movies, when you're talking about Van Wilder, all these other things, or whatever, just like cheap college humor or whatever, sophomoric, because I had watched some other art film or something like that. But that's not what this is. Enjoy all this stuff, man,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
All right, brother. I won't keep you too much longer, man, but I'm excited for the projects you got coming out, dude. I'm really excited to see the success you've gotten. I want you to keep going for it, man. I really hope that everything keeps coming. And again, I'm going to name drop you as often as possible as you continue on your path of fame. So that's just something you have to deal with. I'm going to be the first. I want to be the first person who brings you up at parties, and you're like, Jesus Christ, this fucking guy, I can't get him off my back. You know what I mean? So what? Tell me when you think you'll really know that you've really like made it. What's that moment in your head? What does that look like? Is it an award? Is it a role in a certain person's movie? Like, well, what is that for you?
It's not. It's what I'm able to breathe. In between gigs, kind of thing. When I'm able to relax in between. I would say that's probably when I'll feel best, because there's always so much uncertainty, when projects are, and especially this last year. So not knowing what's next is is nerve-wracking, but to be at a point where, there's so much to do, that I can relax and take it, one gig at a time. When I'm able to relax in between, I'll feel like I've made it. I'll be right where I want to be.
Dude, I respect it, and I'm pushing. I'm gonna start the campaign now and push it over the next 20 years or wherever, how long it takes. But we're gonna get you in a film with Sam Rockwell, even if it's him being the Clint Eastwood of the film. We're gonna get that done. We're gonna make sure that happens.
Oh yeah, no, I wouldn't turn that down.
Of course not. Who would? I wouldn't turn it down, even though I would blow it. All right, man. Thank you for joining me. I really appreciate it, brother. You take care, man.
Oh, you too, buddy. It was a lot of fun, man. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Thanks for checking out Starting Nowhere. Head over to our Facebook page so you can see other podcasts that I'm featured on, or just come tell me that I suck.